Hello and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing the first PSP entry in the Wipeout series, Wipeout Pure, and at this point it's probably the Wipeout game that I've sunk the most amount of time into. As I've already mentioned, I owned Wipeout 2097 as a kid, and I played it back when I was little as with Wipeout Fusion, but I never sunk a huge amount of time into either game, and while time does work its charms on our memory, and so therefore I could be forgetting decent chunks of playtime that I've had. Ever since doing this Wipeout retrospective, I've been playing Wipeout Pure on the PSP, the one that you're seeing now, and I think I've sunk a fair amount of time into it at this point. I've done all the zones, challenges, or at least I've unlocked whatever team zone is. I actually couldn't find where to do that, and I've unlocked what I think is the highest speed class based off of the menu, but I'm actually unable to finish that one, so if there are more unlocks after that, I do not know. But Wipeout Pure I think has become maybe my most played Wipeout, and I absolutely love it, if you couldn't tell. I think it's fantastic. Last week when we were talking about Wipeout Fusion, I mentioned how, while it was a fun racing game, and I wouldn't blame anyone for saying it was their favourite Wipeout game, it did feel like a little bit of a more generic game in terms of how the ship's handled, whereas in this game it definitely feels like a return to form. In terms of, you know, it's not exactly the same as the PS1 titles, don't get me wrong, but it does feel a lot more true to the Wipeout formula than Wipeout Fusion did. This game actually starts out really slow. Like, the first league that they give you is like a snail's pace. We're racing in the Rapier League, if you didn't know, which is about the middle point of speed class. I say if you didn't know. You had no opportunity to know. But when you start off as the Vector, I believe it's called speed class in this one, you're going at a snail's pace. I remember when I first booted this up, I was like, oh wow, this Wipeout's a lot slower than normal Wipeouts. But yeah, this has easily become one of my favourite racing games of all time, and I should add, as a caveat, I have not played Wipeout Pulse yet. I know that both Pure and Pulse were really well received titles, but looking at Metacritic it looks like Wipeout Pulse was a little bit more well received even than Wipeout Pure was, so Wipeout Pulse could easily overtake this as my favourite entry in the series later on. But yeah, I just love the tracks, I love the feel of the ships, I love the general presentation of the game in terms of UI and tournaments, and you know, it's just great. It's just fantastic, and I think it helps that I've just in general been having a bit of a resurgence in my love for the PSP. I just keep playing old PSP games lately and falling in love with them and being like, man, the PSP was such a great console. But yeah, I've talked in the past about the visual style of different Wipeout tracks, and again, Wipeout Pure doesn't necessarily go back to the original kind of cyberpunky neon feel of the first two Wipeout games on PS1. And this level and the next level are quite industrial looking, but I do think it nails a pretty cool aesthetic with most of the tracks on offer here. Also, this Wipeout game introduced the ability to, they got rid of the pit stops, where you would go and revitalize your energy every lap to save from being destroyed, which I like because I found the pit stop method quite frustrating, if I'm being honest. And instead they've replaced it with a more on-the-go system of, you have the option when you pick up a weapon to either use the weapon or to absorb it to regain some energy, so it's a lot more kind of on the fly, like losing health, regaining health, you know. You're not just making a decision as to whether to pick up a boost or whether to pick up a weapon, you're also making a decision as to whether to use that weapon or whether to heal yourself. I think it allows them to, I don't know if weapons specifically do more damage or if there are more weapon pickups or whatever, but it feels like you take more damage over the course of a race, but also it makes the game feel a bit less frustrating because you can't suddenly take a whole bunch of damage at the start of a lap and have to limp your way to a pit stop or otherwise be destroyed. I was watching a Wipeout retrospective video which mentioned that Pure kind of laid the foundation for what a modern Wipeout game would look like going forwards, and yeah, I think I agree with that. Certainly in terms of like track and ship aesthetic, I would still like to see them attempt a return to a more like overly dark cyberpunk neon you know, look that the first two games had, but I think it's hard to do that without artificially downgrading your graphics, like in terms of like a ballistic NG style game, for instance. But that being said, I would also super be down for a retro style Wipeout game from Wipeout themselves, but since it's been so long since we've had a mainline entry in a series, I don't even know if we're ever going to do just a normal Wipeout game over again. Speaking of the last mainline entry in the series, last week I mentioned that I may consider digging out my PS4 so that we can play some of the later Wipeout games via the Omega Collection in this retrospective, but it would be a massive pain to dig out and set up. But this week I did exactly that, and I have been playing a whole bunch of Wipeout Omega Collection, and of course I will talk about that in far greater detail when we get to it. But suffice to say, my going through and playing old Wipeout games has helped me appreciate Wipeout Omega Collection even more. Back when I first got that game, I only got it as part of a PSVR bundle. It was that game and a bunch of smaller titles. And I was like, oh, that's neat. I guess I got the latest Wipeout game, you know? Like, throughout all of my life, Wipeout has just been a franchise which has existed in the peripheries of my attention. I'm like, oh yeah, it's that anti-gravity racing game. It's pretty fun. It's really hard to handle. I've never really spent a decent amount of time in it. I think that is changing. I think I can now safely call myself a Wipeout fan. And so revisiting the Omega Collection with this new mindset has been really fun to do, and I'm going to continue to do so. For those of you who don't know, Wipeout Omega Collection is basically two main games. It's Wipeout 2048, which is a remaster or a port of the PlayStation Vita exclusive title, which I never got to play because I've never owned a Vita. And it's also Wipeout HD, which I can't remember if that was on the Vita as well. I think it was, but basically that collects Wipeout Pure and Wipeout Pulse tracks, and I believe it has some of its own tracks in there as well. I could be wrong on that front. And then there's a third league called Wipeout Fury, which is basically a giant expansion to Wipeout HD. So yeah, it's a pretty packed game. But that's not all I dug out the old PS4 for. That's the difficult sentence to say. Now, I just want to preface this by saying I know that I've done this before. There is an old Weekly Waypoint episode set when I'm playing Cell Damage Overdrive, and it's called something like The PS4 Still Rocks, or something like that. And it's when I set up my PS4 after like a year of owning the Xbox Series S, and I went, oh, that's right, all my PS4 games are still here, and it's still a really nice console, and all of that. And yeah, I'm basically going to talk about a lot of the same things here. It's been like 2 or 3 years since that episode, but once again, I took my PS4 out, I dug it out of the wardrobe, I set it up. It took literally like 2 minutes or less, and I realized I should just have my PS4 out all the time, because if I want to play a PS4 game and I've got my Xbox Series S plugged in, all I have to do is swap a plug and swap a HDMI cable, and suddenly I've got all the capabilities of recording my PS4 that I do with my Xbox Series S, and it's all set up in the same manner, and I've got my controller next to me just like I've got my Xbox controller next to me, and I don't know why I've just not been doing this the entire time. But yes, once again, I've been going through my PS4 and going, wow, all my old games, they're still here, they're still fun to play, and look at all the things that the PlayStation does a little bit better than the Xbox in terms of just presentation. Like the home menu on the PS4 is just so much nicer than the home menu of the Xbox Series S. I think I prefer collecting trophies to collecting achievements, which is funny because back in the day achievements preceded trophies, and trophies were very much viewed as like, you know, the too little too late answer to achievements, at least from my point of view. I think I was just annoyed that Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction did not retroactively add trophies. But yeah, I think it's safe to say I have not been a part of the PlayStation ecosystem in 4 years. I've been paying a little attention to what they've been doing, but since I don't own a PS5, and I have no desire to own a PS5, or very little desire to own a PS5 at this point due to its cost and the limited I guess, exclusives that I would be interested in, I've just not really been paying much attention to what's been going on over there. But with my PlayStation 4 setup, again, I've realised that the PlayStation Plus Classics library does extend backwards to PS4. So what they've been doing recently is they've been porting a lot of PSP games to PS5, but in doing so they've also been porting them to PS4, and I'm not going to subscribe to PS Plus because it's a little bit too pricey for what they have on offer in my opinion, but they do sell those games individually as well. And I was very disappointed to see that the PS2 Ratchet & Clank games still aren't available natively to play on PS4 or PS5, and the way they present that option in their PS Plus app when I was looking made it look like, you know, it was natively downloadable. It's some very small print that basically says you're streaming the PS3 HD versions of these games. Now, there are reasons why they haven't ported Ratchet & Clank to modern hardware yet. It's because you know, a lot of their quote-unquote ports, when I'm calling them ports, I'm just saying you can natively play them on PS4. It's basically just an emulated version of a game. I've been playing, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but I've been playing Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City, the ones before they took them off the store and replaced them with those bad definitive editions. They're literally just emulated PlayStation 2 titles. But the way Ratchet and Clank games are made, to do that would be a lot more difficult to pull off in emulation. And so I understand why they haven't really done it yet, but also, just provide the PS3 versions of a game on PS4. I don't know if that's going to be any easier, but I would take that as well. I know they're more riddled with bugs, so maybe they're hesitant to do that, but I'll take anything at this point. And when I say I'll take anything at this point, that's a great segue to talk about the fact that this month they have ported Ratchet & Clank Size Matters for the PSP to PS4 and PS5. And yeah, when I first saw that, I got really annoyed because any Ratchet & Clank fan knows that Size Matters is not a great Ratchet & Clank game. It was made by a different development studio for the PSP. It's one of those kind of like PSP side calls which just isn't really that great. I've been revisiting a bunch of PSP titles, but you know what I haven't been revisiting? Ratchet & Clank Size Matters. Especially since I've still got Rift Apart in my Steam library that's not been finished. If I want to play some Ratchet & Clank, I can always just re-download that and continue playing through that, right? Why would I buy and play Ratchet & Clank Size Matters for the PS4? I bought Ratchet & Clank Size Matters for the PS4 last night. Don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't perceive me. I hate it. I'm angry about it. But when I tell you I am desperate to show you old Ratchet & Clank games, I mean it. And so I'm going to be streaming Ratchet & Clank Size Matters actually on the Dimension Jam channel fairly soon, or maybe I already have and you can find the VOD over there. I have not played this game in years, and I did beat it back on PSP back in the day, but while it's not the best Ratchet & Clank game, I am still excited to play through it and get the trophies, so there's that at least. While they're porting or making these games available natively on the PS4 and PS5, they should consider doing that for Wipeout Pure and Wipeout Pulse. Although I will say, the version of Wipeout Pure you're looking at right now, if they were to bring it to PS4 and PS5, it wouldn't look like this. It would look a lot worse. It would look a lot more pixely. It would look a lot more stretched, because I have booted up Ratchet & Clank Size Matters and I've watched the opening demo and it looks really bad, and I'll talk about this more when I stream it properly, but I'm so unsurprised but bemused that the emulation that they offer for these PSP games is not great looking. But yeah, I've been getting back into my PS4, and as I already mentioned, I was looking through my library and I realised, oh shit, that's right, I picked up GTA 3 and Vice City and San Andreas before they pulled them down from the shop and replaced them with the definitive edition versions. And this is just pure luck. I didn't know they were going to pull them down from the store. Recently I was looking through my Steam library because I was like, do I own the original versions of the GTA games? Because I had a hankering, I wanted to play them again. I'm not a huge GTA guy, but when it comes to like the PS2 games, I do have fond childhood memories of playing through those games. And when I say childhood memories, I of course mean when I was 18 or over, as those games dictate. And while I remember owning Vice City on Steam, the original version, it is no longer in my Steam library, and I thought that was weird, and I went back and checked, and I actually have an unlisted video on this channel, I will link it in the description, of me attempting to run GTA Vice City on my old laptop. And I wanted to see if I could run it and record it, because I clearly wanted to make the kind of videos that I am now able to make today, which is nice to think about. And yeah, I was having a lot of trouble running it, and I uploaded this video as an example of, oh, damn it, I can't make videos because look at how they come out. And yeah, that would have been a PC version of a game at the very least, and I wouldn't have owned it anywhere other than Steam. But it's not in my Steam library, and as far as I'm aware, they're not allowed to remove games from your Steam library. But, well, maybe I guess they are allowed, but it's not a thing that they do. But yeah, this one no longer exists in my Steam library, so I was a little bummed about that. So to find them all on my PS4, still available to download and play and get trophies in, was really delightful. So I dived back into my old GTA 3 save, and if you're wondering, I did upload a video on this channel like 4 years ago of me playing through GTA 3 on PS4 a little bit. It is using my old headset mic, and it is edited together and uploaded from my PS4, so the audio quality is terrible and the video quality is 720p, but it's a video. I've been uploading some shorts from that video, from some fun moments I had. But anyway, I decided to get back into playing GTA 3, and that game is fucking difficult. Oh my god. I did spend some time in there trying to get some fun trophies, like doing the paramedic missions and doing the fire engine missions, and I'm very close to surpassing $1 million, but ultimately yesterday I decided, let's start fresh with a game I'm more familiar with, and I downloaded GTA Vice City. And oh my god, GTA Vice City is a game I have not played since I was 18, since I was definitely 18 years old. I've played San Andreas a little bit more recently. The Definitive Edition was on Game Pass when that came out. But Vice City is a different beast, and especially since playing GTA 3, it's interesting to note how like the vehicle physics have gotten a little bit better, how the game just feels more polished than GTA 3 in general in terms of it actually has a map, and it has more icons that go on the minimap and that kind of thing. And also I never played through the story as a 18-year-old, so I decided to start doing that as well. And yeah, surprise surprise, GTA Vice City is a pretty fun game. I'm probably not gonna, I have no designs on 100%ing it with the trophies or even necessarily finishing the story, but for now I'm having some fun with it, and you'll probably see some more GTA content on the channel soon. But yeah, I was looking through my PS4 library, and while my Series S library is a little bit more extensive these days, I've got like the Jack and Daxter trilogy on there, which they mercifully did port to PS4. I've got like the Devil May Cry trilogy, which I've barely touched and never really played. I've got some fun stuff on there. I re-downloaded Gran Turismo Sport because I've had a hankering for a Gran Turismo game for a while, and Gran Turismo PSP is quaint but doesn't quite cut it. And it's interesting because Gran Turismo Sport was originally created as like a multiplayer, I don't know if it's multiplayer only, but it was definitely a multiplayer-focused Gran Turismo title, and now the multiplayer service for that game has ended, but obviously they did patch in like a campaign and all that stuff, so it is basically just another Gran Turismo game now. And yeah, it's nice being able to play a Gran Turismo title again. So yeah, surprise surprise, the PlayStation 4 still rocks, just like I said 2 or 3 years ago. How long till I put it away again and leave it for another 3 years and then go, oh wait, the PS4, and pull it out again and go, wow, look, all my PS4 games are here, and wow, it's still fun to play, etc, etc. That being said, before I did set up my PS4, I was kind of going, I wish they would port Gran Turismo 7 and Wipeout Omega Collection to PC, and I would buy it in a heartbeat. I still stand by that. I would still buy them in a heartbeat. Speaking of PC games, as you will perhaps have seen in Miscellaneous Shenanigans, another video game, there we go, nice save, that I've been playing this week, is a game called Wayfinder. Wayfinder originally launched as a free-to-play game. It was sold to me as a game that used to be a free-to-play MMO. I don't know that I would call it an MMO. It looks more like it was probably a free-to-play gacha game in the vein of Genshin Impact, but it's like an ARPG. What they've basically retrofitted it into is a single-cost, offlineable, cooperativable, that's not a word, anyway, co-op game, co-op ARPG that you can play single player. I play it single player, where you can unlock all of these characters and do these randomized dungeons and do these overworld zones and get gear, and it kind of gives me Kingdoms of Amalur vibes. I know Kingdoms of Amalur was meant to be more of a prelude to a larger MMO, but just the fact that it has kind of like online live servicey game design, but it's actually just like an offline RPG. I really like it so far. People have likened it to like a fantasy Warframe in terms of like gear structure and like character acquisition and stuff. I don't know how accurate that is or is not. They might have just more been talking about the fact that it used to be under Warframe's publisher. But yeah, Wayfinder, it's like 20 quid, it's quite cheap, it's in early access, and I'm really enjoying it so far. And if you want to see more about it, check out this week's Miscellaneous Shenanigans video, or I guess last week's Miscellaneous Shenanigans video. I posted that yesterday, and yesterday was Sunday. In terms of last week's Mania, MMO Mania, Reese was calling it like an MMO roulette in terms of doing it for content on Dimension Jam. I like that phrase, MMO roulette. I actually continued. I said I was probably going to slow down in terms of trying different MMOs. I actually, after recording that, decided to download Rift, If you haven't heard, Rift was a really popular free-to-play MMO back in like 2011 or so. It was one of those games that was meant to be like a WoW killer and never quite ended up living up to that hype. But it's still going, and while recent reviews from long-time players are bemoaning the fact that it's been handed to a publisher which is just milking it and not putting out any new real content, in terms of like, I've never played Rift and I want to see what Rift is like, it's still a really decent MMO to play through. I should add the caveat that it gave me a month of their premium subscription service for free when I opened my mail and automatically activated it before I had a chance to say no. So maybe, you know, there are more boundaries to the experience that I will only brush up against in a month when that runs out. But I don't really intend on subscribing to Rift, so maybe I'll reevaluate then. I haven't really played it in a few days though, because I actually, despite saying that I think I'm burning out on it, did get heavily back into Final Fantasy XIV this week as well. I haven't touched Dawn Trail content. I think maybe I'm just burned out on Dawn Trail content. I've been basically playing through A Realm Reborn. I've been leveling up all of my classes and jobs to a minimum of level 30, which yes means I've also been learning to tank and heal. I can't remember if I had this idea last week, I might have mentioned it in last week's video if I did, but my basic idea is get everything to a minimum of level 30, then a minimum of level 50, then 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. My attention span will not hold for that entire project, but it's fun to make a start on it. It's interesting because that's how I played RuneScape, right? If I, I enjoyed getting like my minimum level up. It was like my goal. And I think my minimum level on my Iron Man these days is around level 60. It could be 50. It's been a while since I dipped my toe into RuneScape. But treating the different classes like I do different skills in RuneScape is actually a really fun way to play the game. Also, for those of you who don't know, when you hit level 30 in Final Fantasy XIV, you basically evolve your job. So, for instance, Lancer becomes Dragoon, Archer becomes Bard, that kind of thing. And Archer has a different story to Bard. So Archer has like a self-contained story, then you unlock Bard, then Bard has a self-contained story between 30 to 50, which is kind of why I've structured this project like this. And yeah, it's been really fun. I got everything to level 30 and I am now working on getting my Paladin up to level 50. And I don't know if I'm going to go down the list of jobs, you know, Paladin to Warrior to Dark Knight to White Mage to Scholar, you know, that kind of thing. It is my plan, but if I get too bored or frustrated with one role, I could always swap to another. Now that being said, tomorrow, as of the time of recording, because it is Monday today that I'm recording this, comes the War Within pre-patch, and I don't have any plans to resubscribe to check out the War Within pre-patch, but it is a reminder that the War Within, World of Warcraft's next expansion, does come out very soon. In the past, I have juggled Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft at the same time, but it's not my ideal method of playing these games. I don't know how successful of an expansion the War Within is going to be. They have been talking about how they're going to be putting a renewed effort into the story of the game. It's a big selling point of this next expansion, and yet the latest lore book they just sold, Warcraft Chronicle Volume 4, has been slated critically for having like inaccuracies based on previous things they've said, and also some bizarre new retcons and stuff. So that's not a good sign, but I haven't read too much into it. It could just be the usual detractors saying these things. I can't say I'm specifically too excited for the War Within, but I am at least curious about how warbands are going to affect the feel of the game going forwards in terms of horizontal progression, or I guess across different alts. If I could play my different WoW characters and have it feel like swapping between jobs in Final Fantasy XIV in terms of I'm not suddenly losing a bunch of progress in terms of quests and stuff, that would be great, but it remains to be seen how that's going to work out. Anyway, a bit of a longer one today because I wanted to show you the base roster of the 8 tracks in Wipeout Pure, but that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you have had a good week, and I hope you will go on to have an even better one. Catch you in whatever I make next.